What if I told you that the worst night of my life became the beginning of the greatest love story I never saw coming? What if a broken down car in the middle of nowhere led me to discover not just who I really am, but who I was meant to be with? This is that story, and trust me, you won't see this twist coming. My name is Alex, and 3 months ago, I was just another corporate guy in a suit, living a life that looked perfect on paper, but felt empty inside. I had the job, the apartment, even the girlfriend my parents approved of, but something was missing, and I couldn't put my finger on what. That night in September changed everything. I was driving back from a client meeting in the city, already running late for dinner with Sarah, my girlfriend of 2 years. The rain was coming down hard, and my phone kept buzzing with her increasingly frustrated texts. Then, like the universe decided to test me, my car started making this horrible grinding sound. Steam poured from under the hood as I pulled over on this deserted stretch of highway. Middle of nowhere, no self-service, just me and the darkness. I popped the hood, stared at the engine like I knew what I was looking at, and realized I was completely screwed. That's when I saw the light. A single flickering neon sign in the distance. Jake's 24-hour auto repair. It looked like something out of an old movie, the kind of place you'd expect to find ghosts, not salvation. But it was my only option. I grabbed my jacket and started walking through the rain. The garage looked abandoned from the outside. No cars in the lot. Windows dark except for that one neon sign, buzzing and crackling in the rain. For a moment, I wondered if this was some kind of horror movie setup. Was I about to become the guy who walks into the creepy garage and never walks out? But then I heard it. The sound of metal on metal, someone working. I pushed open the heavy door, and that's when I saw him, Jake. He was lying under a vintage Mustang, just his legs visible in worn jeans and steel-toed boots. His toolbox sat open beside him, organized with the precision of someone who took pride in his work. The garage smelled like motor oil, metal, and something else, something warm and inviting that I couldn't identify. We're closed, came a voice from under car, deep, rough around the edges, but not unfriendly. Your sign says 24-hour. I called back, water still dripping from my jacket. He rolled out from under the car. I forgot how to breathe. Jake was nothing like the guys I usually work with. Where they wore ties, he wore a stained white tank top that clung to his chest. Where they had soft office hands, his were calloused and stained with honest work. His dark hair was messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. And when he looked at me with those green eyes, I felt something shift inside my chest. Something I'd never felt before. "Car trouble?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. A slight smile playing at the corner of his mouth. I nodded. Suddenly aware of how out of place I looked in my business suit and polished shoes. About a mile back, making some horrible noise and then just died. He studied me for a moment, those green eyes taking in my expensive suit, my perfectly styled hair, my obvious helplessness. But there was no judgment there, just curiosity. "All right, city boy," he said, standing up and grabbing his jacket from a hook on the wall. "Let's go save your fancy car." The ride to my car in Jake's tow truck was intense, not because of any grand conversation or dramatic moment, but because of the silence. The way he drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift. The way the dashboard lights highlighted the strong line of his jaw. The way I kept stealing glances at him and hoping he wouldn't notice. "So, what do you do?" he asked as we pulled up behind my BMW. "Marketing consultant," I said, then added quickly, "Nothing exciting." He chuckled, a low sound that did things to my stomach I wasn't ready to examine. "I bet it pays better than fixing cars." "Money isn't everything," I said, surprised at myself. Sarah would have disagreed. Jake looked at me then, really looked at me, like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. "No," he said softly, "it's not." He popped my hood and immediately identified the problem. Blown radiator hose. Simple fix, but not something that could be done on the side of the road in the rain. As he hooked up my car to his truck, I found myself watching the way his muscles moved under his shirt, the careful precision of his movements, the gentle way he handled my expensive car, like it mattered. "This is going to take a couple hours," he said once we were back at his garage. "I've got the part, but there's other work involved. You're welcome to wait, Or I could call you a cab to town. I should have called the cab. Should have gone home to Sarah. Explain what happened. Made up for being late. Instead, I heard myself saying, I'll wait. That decision changed everything, though I didn't know it yet. Jake worked on my car while I sat on an old couch in the corner of the garage, supposedly reading emails on my phone, but really just watching him. There was something hypnotic about the way he moved, the quiet confidence with which he diagnosed problems and fixed them. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone. He just was. About an hour in, he straightened up and caught me staring. You don't have to sit way over there, he said, gesturing to a stool beside where he was working. Unless you're afraid of getting your suit dirty. It was a challenge, wrapped in a smile. I moved to the stool. Tell me about this car, he said as he worked. BMW 3 Series, recent model. Nice ride for a marketing consultant. It was a gift, I said. From Sarah, my girlfriend. For my promotion last year. I noticed how he paused for just a second when I mentioned Sarah, but his expression didn't change. She knows cars. She knows what looks successful, I said, then immediately regretted the bitter tone that had crept into my voice. Jake glanced at me, those green eyes seeing too much. And is that important to you? Looking successful? The question hung in the air between us, heavier than it should have been, because the honest answer was yes, it had been important to me. Until tonight. Until I found myself in a garage with a man who wore grease stains like badges of honor and asked questions that made me examine my life in ways I'd never dared before. I used to think so, I said quietly. He nodded like that made perfect sense, then handed me a wrench. Here, hold this steady while I tighten the clamp. Our fingers brushed as I took the tool, and I felt electricity shoot my arm. Jake's eyes met mine for just a moment, and I saw something there, recognition, maybe, like he felt it too. The next hour passed in comfortable conversation, mixed with charged silences. Jake told me about growing up in this small town, about taking over the garage from his uncle, about the satisfaction of fixing things with his hands. I found myself sharing stories I'd never told anyone, about feeling trapped in corporate life, about the pressure from my parents to be someone I wasn't sure I wanted to be, about dreams I'd abandoned along the way. You know what I think? Jake said as he finished the repair, closing my hood with a satisfying thud. I think you're more than your job title, Alex. I think there's someone interesting under all that polish. My heart hammered in my chest. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. No one had ever looked at me the way Jake was looking at me right then. Like I was worth discovering. Your car's ready, he said, but neither of us moved toward it. We stood there in the fluorescent light of his garage, rain still pattering on the roof. Something unspoken hanging between us, like a bridge neither of us was quite ready to cross. Then my phone buzzed. Sarah's name lit up the screen, along with several missed calls I hadn't noticed. Reality crashed back in. I was engaged, well, practically engaged. I had a life waiting for me, responsibilities, expectations. I couldn't be standing in a garage at 2 a.m. feeling, whatever this was, for a man I just met. Could I? I should go, I said, but my voice came out uncertain, like a question instead of a statement. Jake nodded slowly, understanding more than I was saying. Yeah, I figured you would. I paid him for the repair, our fingers brushing again as I handed him the cash. He walked me to my car, hands shoved deep in his pockets. Drive safe. City boy, he said as I got behind the wheel. I sat there for a moment, engine running, looking at him through my rain-streaked windshield. He raised one hand in a small wave, and I felt something tear inside my chest. I drove away without looking back. But I couldn't stop thinking about those green eyes, that rough laugh, the way it made me feel like maybe I was worth knowing. What I didn't know was that this wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning. And what happened next would challenge everything I thought I knew about love, about myself, and about what it means to be truly alive. If you're enjoying Alex and Jake's story, hit that like button to let me know, and make sure you're subscribed because you won't want to miss what happens in part 2. Trust me, the twist that's coming will change everything. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of going through the motions of my regular life, while Jake's words echoed in my head. I think there's someone interesting under all that polish. Sarah noticed I was distracted. You've been different since that night your car broke down, she said over dinner at our usual upscale restaurant. More distant. She wasn't wrong. I found myself staring out windows, thinking about callous hands and honest work. I'd catch myself taking detours that went past auto shops, hoping to see a familiar tow truck. I started listening to different music, watching different shows, questioning choices I'd made without thinking. I was falling apart, and I didn't understand why. Then my car started making that sound again. Not the same sound. Jake had fixed that problem perfectly. This was something else. Something subtle that only I seemed to hear. A little vibration in the steering wheel, a slight hesitation when I accelerated. Sarah said she couldn't hear anything. My regular mechanic said everything looked fine, but I knew better. I knew it was just an excuse. I drove back to Jake's garage on a Thursday night, telling myself I was being practical. He was good at his job. This had nothing to do with the way my pulse quickened as I saw the familiar neon sign flickering in the darkness. The garage looked the same, but something was different. As I pulled into the lot, I saw Jake through the window, and he wasn't alone. Another man was there, tall and lean with sandy hair, standing close enough to Jake that their conversation looked intimate. My stomach dropped. What right did I have to be jealous? I was with Sarah. I was straight. Or at least, I'd always thought I was. This feeling churning in my gut was just confusion, nothing more. I almost drove away. Almost. But then Jake looked up and saw me through the window. Our eyes met across the distance, and that same electric jolt hit me. He said something to the other man, who glanced my way with obvious curiosity, then disappeared into the back of the shop. Jake came outside, wiping his hands on a rag. That same small smile I'd been dreaming about for 3 weeks. City boy, he said. Car trouble again? Different issue this time, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. Steering feels off. He nodded seriously, but I caught something in his eyes, amusement, maybe, like he knew exactly why I was really there. Let me take a look, he said. This time, when Jake worked on my car, there was less conversation but more awareness. I was hyper-aware of every movement he made, every casual comment, every moment when he looked at me like he was seeing something I didn't even know was there. So, who was that guy? I asked, trying to sound casual as Jake checked my steering fluid. Marcus. Jake said without looking up, my ex. The word hit me like a physical blow. Ex, as in ex-boyfriend, as in Jake dated man, as in the possibility I'd been trying not to think about for 3 weeks was suddenly undeniably real. He seems nice. I managed. Jake straightened up, those green eyes finding mine with laser focus. He is nice. We're still friends. But Alex, he moved closer. Close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with motor oil. Close enough that I had to look up to meet his eyes. He's not why you're here, is he? The question hung between us like a dare. I could have lied. Could have insisted that I really did think there was something wrong with my car. That this was purely coincidence. That I was just a straight guy who happened to need automotive help twice in a month. Instead, I told the truth. No, I whispered. He's not. Jake's expression softened, and he reached up to touch my face, his thumb brushing across my cheek so gently I wondered if I'd imagined it. I've been hoping you'd come back, he said quietly, but I wasn't sure you would. I don't. I struggled to find words for something I didn't understand myself. I don't know what this is, Jake. I've never felt anything like this before. I know, he said. It's okay. You don't have to have all the answers tonight. But I wanted answers. I wanted to understand why this man made me feel alive in a way I'd never experienced before. Why the thought of never seeing him again made my chest ache. Why standing this close to him felt like coming home to a place I'd never known I was looking for. There's nothing wrong with your car, Jake said softly, stepping back just enough to give me space to breathe. You know that, right? I nodded, embarrassed but not sorry. So what now, Alex? You go back to your life, your girlfriend, your suits and meetings? You pretend that whatever this is between us doesn't exist. The question I'd been dreading, because going back was a logical choice, the safe choice, the choice everyone expected me to make. But looking at Jake, seeing the vulnerability he was trying to hide behind that confident exterior, I realized that safe wasn't what I wanted anymore. What if I don't want to pretend? I asked. Something shifted in his expression. Hope mixed with caution. Then you need to figure out what you do want, he said. Because I'm not interested in being someone's secret or someone's experiment. I've done that before and it doesn't end well. The honesty in his voice cut deep, but it was fair. He was protecting himself, and he had every right to. I was the one who'd driven into his life with no clear understanding of what I was looking for. I need time, I said. I know, he replied. But Alex, don't take too long. Life's too short to waste time being someone you're not. I left that night with more questions and answers, but also with something I'd never had before. Clarity about what I was missing. It wasn't success or money or approval. It was authenticity. It was a feeling of being known, truly known, by someone who saw value in who I really was, not who I pretended to be. The next week was hell. I tried to go back to normal, but normal felt like wearing clothes that didn't fit anymore. Sarah planned a dinner party with her work friends, the kind of event where I was expected to play the part of the successful boyfriend, making small talk about market trends and investment opportunities. I made it through about an hour before I excused myself to the bathroom and called in sick to my own girlfriend's party. Sarah found me on the balcony of our apartment later that night. Okay, she said, crossing her arms. What's really going on with you? I looked at her, beautiful, successful, everything my parents had wanted for me, and felt terrible because I couldn't give her what she deserved. I think we need to talk, I said. Breaking up with Sarah was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but also one of the most honest. I didn't tell her about Jake. That felt too complicated, too raw to explain when I barely understood it myself. I just told her that I wasn't the person she thought I was, that I needed to figure out who I really was before I could be with anyone. She cried. I cried. But underneath the pain, there was relief. For both of us, I think. I hope you find whatever you're looking for, she said as I packed my things. Me too, I said, and meant it. I found a small apartment across town, nothing fancy, but mine. I took a hard look at my job, my lifestyle, my priorities. I started making changes, small ones at first, then bigger ones. But through all of it, I kept thinking about Jake. 2 months after that second visit to his garage, I drove back to Jake's place. Not because my car needed fixing, not because I had an excuse, but because I finally had something to say. It was a Saturday afternoon, bright and clear. I found him working on that same Mustang, but this time when I walked in, he wasn't alone. Marcus was there again, and this time I realized why the conversation had seemed so intimate. Marcus was Jake's business partner, not a romantic rival. Well, look who's back, Marcus said with a grin when he saw me. The mysterious city boy who's been making Jake mope around for weeks. I don't mope, Jake protested. But he was smiling as he stood up, those green eyes finding mine immediately. Actually, I said, my heart hammering but my voice steady. I was hoping, Jake, and I could talk. Alone. Marcus looked between us, then grinned wider. I'll go grab lunch. Take your time. He left with a wink, and suddenly it was just Jake and me, standing in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the garage doors. So, Jake said, leaning against his workbench, trying to look casual but not quite managing it. You figure things out? Some of them. I said, moving closer. I broke up with Sarah. I quit my job. I'm living in a studio apartment that's about a quarter the size of my old place, and I've never been happier. His eyebrows went up. That's a lot of changes. Yeah, well, someone told me that life's too short to waste time being someone you're not. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Smart guy. He has his moments. I took another step closer. Jake, I don't have all the answers. I'm still figuring out who I am, what I want. But I know one thing for certain. I want to figure out with you. If you'll have me. For a moment, Jake just looked at me, those green eyes searching my face like he was looking for proof that I meant what I was saying. Then he moved, closing the distance between us in 2 steps, his hands coming up to frame my face. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Because once we cross this line, Alex, there's no going back to pretending." "I'm tired of pretending," I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. When Jake kissed me, it was like the missing piece of myself clicking into place. Soft at first, tentative, giving me space to change my mind. But I didn't want space. I wanted this. The warmth of his hands on my face, the taste of coffee and possibility on his lips, the feeling of being exactly where I belonged. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, Jake rested his forehead against mine. "So what now?" he asked. "Now we figure out together," I said, "one day at a time." I never did become a mechanic, but I did learn to change my own oil. Jake never became a corporate consultant, but he did expand his business with help from someone who understood marketing and customer service. We found our balance somewhere between his world and mine, creating something that was uniquely ours. I still wear suits sometimes, but now they're paired with work boots and the confidence that comes from knowing exactly who I am. Jake still gets grease under his fingernails, but now he also helps me review business proposals and makes fun of my terrible coffee. We live above the garage in an apartment that Jake renovated himself. It's small, cozy, filled with the smell of motor oil and the sound of laughter. My parents are still adjusting to the idea of having a mechanic for a potential son-in-law, but they're trying. Jake's family welcomed me like I'd always belonged. Sometimes I think about that night when my car broke down, about how close I came to calling a cab instead of walking into Jake's garage, about how many moments we have in our lives where everything could change if we're just brave enough to let it. Love isn't always convenient. It doesn't always make sense on paper. Sometimes it shows up in a garage at 2 a.m. wearing work boots and asking questions that make you examine your entire life. But when it's real, when it's the kind of love that sees you, accepts you, challenges you to be better, it's worth every risk, every change, every moment of uncertainty. I came looking for someone to fix my car. Instead, I found someone who helped me fix my life. And Jake was right. There was someone interesting under all that polish. I just needed the right person to help me find him. What about you? Have you ever had a moment that completely changed the direction of your life? A chance encounter that made you question everything you thought you knew about yourself? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, show some love with a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more authentic LGBTQ plus love stories that celebrate the courage it takes to be true to yourself. Remember, your story matters, your love is valid, and somewhere out there, someone is waiting to meet the real you.